welcome to this edition of Healthy Habits. I'm your host, Amy Davis, and today with us is special guest JJ Flizanes. JJ is a celebrity personal trainer and host of the Fit to Love podcast, and today JJ and I will be discussing the dangers of passive stretching. JJ, hello, and thanks so much for having us here in your home.
Thank you for coming and having me on the show.
Now, passive stretching is something that I think all of us have done in our lives since childhood and on. I still do it. I'm guilty of it when I go for a run or after a run, simply because I just think that's what we're supposed to do. So could you sort of explain to us what a stretch really is?
Sure. So a stretch, by definition, is a lengthening of a muscle, right? And how a muscle contracts, actually, can I use your arm?
Sure.
Okay, let's look at your biceps. So your bicep stops, your bicep starts, there are muscles that go up and down your shoulder joint, right? So we have an attachment here and an attachment here for your biceps. There's two muscles here. And in order for this muscle to contract, one point has to come closer to the second point. So when this muscle pulls to contract, it shortens, right? It lifts this arm. It pulls and shortens, right? We can even step further and continue pulling and it would look like this. This would be a full contraction for your bicep, right? So we understand that a contraction pulls together. That's the active part of an exercise, where your brain is asking the muscle to contract in order to pull and become shorter. A stretch is actually the opposite of that. It's a relaxing of the muscle. So for the biceps case, a stretch would be anything from the contracted position back to the lengthened position to an opposite position. But here's the thing. Here's the funny thing about stretching. A stretch isn't active. A stretch, when the muscles are like Velcro. And when they're fully contracted, imagine that your two Velcro pieces are on top of each other. And this is your contraction. And you get to the end and you still have a little bit of muscle control neurologically. Once you pass that attached length, now we move into that there's no control neurologically. And when we go in past that, there's no connectivity, there's no pulse happening in that muscle. Wow. So how does it get there? How does your muscle then lengthen? Well, it's because there's a muscle on the opposite side contracting. Does that make sense? Yeah. So in order for your bicep to stretch, we have to contract the tricep. Does that make sense?
It does.
So there's no time where the body is moving and there's not something contracting. If you are stretching, something has to be pulling you there. So the focus is on the contraction that's pulling you there versus trying to pull apart a muscle that has no connectivity to your brain.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
It does.
So passive stretching becomes dangerous because we have no control over that muscle and we're not focused on the muscles that are actually moving the bones in that position. Not to mention, passive stretching does not increase active range of motion.
Really?
No.
That's what we think it does.
To stretch and to move. If I want to take my arm behind my head, I want to move it there, right? And this is all that I have. It's because the muscles that are needed to put me there can't do that. So why would I then shove more weight back there? Do you understand how that's dangerous? It's going to rip some muscle tissue. Yes. So active range of motion is honoring your current active range of motion. So active stretching is really focusing on the opposite muscle group in order to stretch the other one. So I'm going to show you an exercise. It's an active stretch, and actually we can do two of them quickly so I can show you how to actually build more active range of motion. Can I tell you a real quick story about it? Okay. So I had a client a long time ago who, and I don't stretch any of my people, but he had said to me, my fishing is so much better. I am so much stronger. I have so much more range of motion in both sides. How come we never stretch? And it's because we do active stretching with all our exercises. So I want you to go ahead and lie down on your back. Great. You're gonna keep this knee bent. You're gonna straighten this leg out.
Right?
Okay. This is a leg lift, and we're gonna focus on emphasizing the quadricep muscle, because I want your quadricep muscle, when it contracts, because it starts down here and then ends up here, when these 2 points shorten, what happens is they pull your leg up. So I want you to very mindfully visualize that this is pulling, just like your pants would be gripping and pulling your leg up and over, like towards you. Okay. And stop when you can't go any further. Good. Okay, now, we're gonna look at mine, and mine might be very close because we have a little bit similar structures. I'm gonna pull mine up, okay? And our structure, how far we can move, has a lot to do with our bones. And I think you have a longer torso than I do.
I think I may have shorter legs than you do. So in that case, I'm not going to have the same range of motion. Now, that's your active range of motion. And in order to get that stronger or to increase it as much as you could, you'd keep doing that exercise and you would be contracting your quadricep, and in essence, you're stretching your hamstring.
I can feel it.
Now, the danger is when we have, in the personal training situation, which I used to do, unfortunately, because that's what I was told to do until I finally figured it out, is I would take your leg and push it further. What do you think that's going to do? And now this tissue has no connectivity. So what's going to happen as I push? It's going to tear if it doesn't go any further. I mean, I could literally take your toe and put it down by your ear, but that would rip everything and break a few things in the process, right? So passive stretching won't increase this because this is about contracting muscle.
Got it. Which I'm guessing would cause scar tissue and then make you even less flexible.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, JJ, why do you think so many of our teachers growing up in our soccer practice, our personal trainers, promote passive stretching?
Well, passive stretching feels good. It's definitely, it's like having a massage at the end of the workout when I'm gonna push your leg further and I'm gonna force it to go a little bit further. It can feel good. And you know what, that's sort of what I would recommend is that if you're doing passive stretching, just do it to the point of which it kind of feels nice for you, but anywhere past that is going to tear your muscle. And why do they do it? Because that's what they were taught. No one's really thinking until someone examines why you do what you do. You just learn from the person who taught you and think, okay, well, that's what I'm supposed to do.
It's really fascinating. Thank you so much for opening our eyes to this information. I think many of our viewers, including myself, are going to approach our stretching practices quite differently. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Healthy Habits. We'll see you next time.